Okay guys, so going to go over chapter 3 here. So purpose of this video, to give you guys a quick breakdown on chapter 3, 12 hours worth of material. Hopefully we'll be able to get through this within an hour. So if you guys ever happen to miss a chapter, you want to review this chapter, here you guys go. So we'll get right into it here. Chapter 3 is the longest chapter in the book. It's New Jersey license laws, probably arguably the most important chapter in the book as well. And on the first page here, if you turn in your textbook to page 15, the first thing that we're going to start off with here is the Real Estate Commission. So with the Real Estate Commission, there's a number of things that you'll have to know about them for the test they could potentially ask about, and we'll go over these here now. The first thing just to start off with is they could simply just ask you how many members are on the Real Estate Commission, and there's 8 members on the Real Estate Commission broken into what I like to call 5-2-1. 5 of those people are both brokers and state residents for the past 10 years. 2 are members of the public, and 1's a governmental designee. So number 1, if they were to ask you how many members are on the Real Estate Commission, there's 8 members on the Real Estate Commission, broken into that 5-2-1. 5 are both brokers and state residents for the past 10 years. 2 are members of the public, and 1's a governmental designee. Next, with the Real Estate Commission, they could ask you who do they operate underneath and who are they funded by. They operate under and they are funded by the Department of Banking and Insurance. So the Real Estate Commission is not just like the standalone entity that operates by themselves. They do operate underneath and they are funded by the Department of Banking and Insurance. So that's number 2. Number 3 for the Real Estate Commission, they have a lot of powers. Their job is really to oversee actions of licensees and brokerage firms amongst a lot of other things. But by overseeing the actions of licensees and brokerage firms, if they were to catch you acting up, if they were to catch you doing something egregious, if they were to catch you doing something that violates license laws, they can launch an investigation. Now, number 3, when the Real Estate Commission launched an investigation, how many days' notice would they have to give you before they would come and search your records? The answer is 0. They can search your records unannounced. At any point in time, they're allowed to just show up and search your records. So number 3, 0 days' notice to search your records. Number 4, they have what we call subpoena power. And what subpoena power is, it's the power to call a witness to the stand in the course of investigation. So if they're investigating you and they think that you've done something wrong, they think that you've done something egregious, they have what we call subpoena power. And subpoena power can mean maybe they know somebody in the office knows something about you that you did illegally and they won't speak. They can issue a subpoena to have that person talk, basically. And last but not least, if they were to ask you who signs off on real estate laws, who promulgates real estate laws, it would be the state legislature. The Real Estate Commission, they are not the ones who sign off on real estate laws. It would be the state legislature who does that. So if they were to ask you who promulgates or who signs off on real estate laws, it would be the state legislature, not the Real Estate Commission. And one more is a bonus. The Real Estate Commission, they don't get involved in commission disputes between licensees. The one thing they can do, as we like to say, is demand an accounting. What that means basically is show me an itemized list of who should have gotten paid what. So what I mean by that is, for instance, let's say John Smith from ABC Realty and Jane Doe from XYZ Realty did a deal. And for whatever reason, all the commission got paid to XYZ Realty. And XYZ would not split that with ABC Realty. The Real Estate Commission does not get directly involved. The local real estate board is going to handle that through arbitration. What the Real Estate Commission can do, though, is demand an accounting. All right, so let's turn the page here. Let's go to page 16. And on page 16 here, we're going to talk about the different types of licenses. The first one that we're going to talk about is broker. I'm going to start writing some of this stuff on the board. I don't know how clear it'll be with the glare, but I'm going to write it up here anyway. So the first license here is a broker. And number 1, if you're a broker, what does that mean? If you're a broker, that means you're the broker of record at a licensed real estate firm. So let's say that you're an agent and you just think it's cool to call yourself a broker, like you're just a regular salesperson. Well, legally, if you want to call yourself a broker, that means you're the broker of salesperson at a licensed real estate firm. So number 1, if you're a broker, that means you're the broker of record at a licensed firm. So that's number 1. Number 2, as the broker, if they were to ask you how many offices can you be the broker of record at, the answer is 1 and 1 only. You can only be the broker of record at one office and one office only. Like, you can own 10 offices, that's fine, but you yourself can only be the broker of record at one of them. You'd have to hire 9 separate other people to be the brokers of records at the other, 9 firms that you have. So, number 2 here, if they were to ask you how many offices may you be the broker of record at, the answer is 1. Again, number 2 can only be broker of record at one office only. And with that one office, it's not like you were just a broker of record and you could go to Florida for 6 months in the winter time. It doesn't work that way. As a broker of record, your job is to oversee the actions of licensees in your employ. And technically, if any licensees do something that violates license laws and they get in trouble with the Real Estate Commission, you could be responsible as well. So the requirement the Real Estate Commission has is that you, as the broker of record, you must be physically present at least 1 day per week. If you're not physically present at least 1 day per week, you're an absentee broker, and the term we use for that is license lending. License lending is illegal. That's when you're an absentee broker. So number 3 here, if they were to ask how often do you have to show up, it's 1 day per week. So again, the broker of record must be physically present at least 1 day per week. Again, obviously excluding vacations and emergencies, but a vacation would not include 6 months to Florida in the winter time. So again, number 3 here, must be present at least 1 day per week. And again, make sure you write this down also. If they're not physically present 1 day per week, that's called license lending, and license lending is illegal. So if they're not physically present 1 day per week, it's called license lending, and that is illegal. Being that I'm videotaping this, it probably makes sense not for me to waste time writing stuff on the board, so I'm just going to say stuff, and if you guys need to pause this video, you guys can pause it, rewind it, do as you please. So for the rest of the time, I'm just going to go off the stuff in the book just for time's sake here. So the next type of license we have here is on the bottom left of page 16, and that's called a broker salesperson. So a broker salesperson is somebody who's fulfilled all the requirements to be a broker, but they're just operating in a salesperson's capacity. So to give you guys an example of a broker salesperson, I've been a salesperson, let's say full-time for 3 years, because one of the requirements to get your broker's license is that you must be a full-time salesperson for at least 3 years. So I've been a full-time salesperson, I go to real estate school, I take the broker's class, pass the broker's school and state exam, well, I now have my broker's license. But if I continue to operate in a salesperson's capacity, I'm a broker salesperson. At any point in time, I could be elevated to broker, I can go off and start my own firm, or I can be recruited to another firm and be their broker. But in general, a broker salesperson is somebody who's fulfilled all the requirements to be a broker, but they're just operating in a salesperson's capacity. We call that a broker salesperson. Then on the bottom left here of page 16, we have a salesperson. One of the main things I would say to know about being a salesperson is that the only person you could ever accept your commission from is just your employing broker and your employing broker only. So you can't accept commission from like an appreciative seller who's like, hey, you did a great job, let me give you some extra money, which again in real life I always say would never happen anyway, but the only person you could ever accept commission from is just your employing broker. And how much will your employing broker pay you? Well, that's all up to what's found in this thing called your employment agreement. So I'd write this down, your employment agreement. So your employment agreement, that is the agreement between the broker and the salesperson, which outlines 2 main things. Number 1, your commission split, and number 2, a promise your broker is going to pay you out all commissions due within 10 business days of receiving those funds. And the key word there really is receiving the funds, not within 10 business days of closing, but rather within 10 business days of them receiving the funds. Those are the things that you would find in that employment agreement between the broker and the salesperson. Now, also, as a salesperson, how many brokerage firms can you work for? The answer is 1. You can only work for 1 brokerage firm and 1 brokerage firm only. Now, if you have a license in New Jersey and New York, you can work for 1 in New York, 1 in New Jersey, but we only care about New Jersey for our test. So if they were to ask that question, you can only work for 1 brokerage firm and 1 brokerage firm only. And also, we'll get into advertising a little bit later, but if, you as a salesperson ever place an ad, every ad that you place must have at least 1 thing, and that's the name of your brokerage firm. If you don't have the name of your brokerage firm in an ad, we call that a blind ad, and that's illegal. All right, so next here on the right side of page 16 talks about referral agents. So as a referral agent, what's the only thing that you can do? The only thing that you can do is just refer clients to your broker. So again, as a referral agent, only one thing you can do. You can only refer clients to your broker. So that's number one to write down for referral agents. Number two, they might ask you what type of education are referral agents exempt from taking. And that's continuing education to a certain degree. There's a little more detail on that with, every 6 years and stuff, but we're not going to get into that now. But if they were to ask you what type of education does a referral agent not have to take, or what type of licensee is exempt from taking continuing education to renew their license, the answer would be a referral agent. All right, so going to page 17, it talks about some of the exemptions. Now, the most common exemption of somebody who would not have to have a real estate license to sell real estate or deal with clients in real estate would be owners. Like if you're an owner, you want to sell for sale by owner, knock yourself out. You could do that, no problem. If you're a landlord, you want to rent your unit out, for rent by owner, you could do that. If you're an attorney and you're liquidating a client's estate, let's say, you could transfer that property, don't have to have a real estate license. But if you're an attorney, can you start knocking on doors and saying, hey, I'm an attorney, I'd love to list your house? No, you can't do that. You could transfer property as long as it's within the scope of your business if you're an attorney. And if you go to the bottom left here, page 17, talks about activities that might require licensure. So activities that require licensure would include, just to make it really simple for you, anytime you work with a client and you're representing them in buying, selling, renting real estate, and you're getting paid to do so, you're getting paid a commission, you're not like a property manager just working on a salary, you would have to have a real estate license. So that's pretty self-explanatory in the bottom of page 17 in your textbook. And then on the right side here of page 17, it talks about the qualifications to get these licenses. Now, there's 4 main qualifications to know if you're a salesperson or a referral agent in order to get your license. And those 4 main qualifications is number 1, you got to be 18 years of age. Number 2, a high school education or GED equivalent. Number 3, you're of good moral character. That means you have no egregious felonies on your record. And number 4, you just have to be a U.S. resident. You don't have to be a citizen. Again, number 4, just have to be a U.S. resident, not a citizen. And those are the 4 main requirements for a salesperson. And then the requirements for a broker salesperson, same exact requirements except 2 differences. Number 1, in order to be a broker salesperson, you must be full-time as a salesperson first for 3 years prior to you taking your broker's class. So if I was full-time in real estate for 3 years, a few years back, then I stopped really doing real estate full-time. It's got to be 3 consecutive years prior to your application for your broker's license. So number 1, 3 years full-time experience as a salesperson to get a broker's license or broker salesperson's. And number 2, their class 150 hours, whereas a salesperson's is only 75. So those are the qualifications to get a broker's license or a salesperson's license. So let's turn the page here. Let's go to page 18. On page 18, talks about criminal history record check. So as I just said, in order to get your real estate license, you can't be a convicted felon. For the most part, for instance, let's say you were a convicted felon and you were charged with marijuana possession, you could potentially get your license. You just have to apply with the state for that and explain the situation. But in general, how would they do your criminal history record check? Well, the way that they would do that is you have to get your fingerprints done. And you get your fingerprints done, and also on the state exam, when you take it, there's going to be a series of questions. One of them is going to ask you, are you been charged with a felony, misdemeanor, blah, 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 things like that. You would have to check that off, and if you check off yes, you'll have to explain it to them. So again, most convicted felons cannot get a real estate license. Examinations, the next thing here on page 18, they might ask you within what period of time would you have to pass your state exam. Within 1 year from your course completion date, which is the date that you guys pass your school exam, you would have to pass your state exam. So if they were to ask you what period of time does a licensee have to apply for their license, so you have 1 year from the date that you guys have your course completion date to do 3 things: pass your state exam, get your fingerprints done, and have your broker apply for your license. So you have 1 year from your course completion date to do that. Then towards the bottom left here of 18, payment of fees. And payment of fees, when would you have to pay fees to renew your license? Well, you'd have to do that at license renewal. So what we have to know for this is, when does your license renew? Well, your license term is from July 1st odd numbered year to July 1st odd numbered year. So if they were to ask you what is your license term is from July 1st odd numbered year to July 1st odd numbered year. So the current one that we're in as I speak right now is July 1, 2017 to July 1, 2019. And then we get into continuing education requirements. So CE, as we like to call it. So for continuing education, how many credits do you need every license cycle to renew your license? You need 12 credits. So you need 12 credits every license cycle to renew your license. That's number one. Number two, of those 12 credits, 6 are going to be core, 6 are going to be elective. And of the 6 core, at least 2 must be ethics. So again, you're going to have 6 core, 6 elective, and of the 6 core, at least 2 will have to be ethics. Also, in regards to the CE, I said earlier, what type of licensee does not have to take CE? We said referral agents. Again, referral agents don't have to take CE. And one more thing. There's a certain date you have to complete your CE by to avoid a $200 late fine. And that date is April 30th of the odd numbered year. So let's say you're in the license cycle from July 1, 2017 to July 1, 2019. You must complete your CE prior to April 30th, 2019 to avoid a $200 late fine, for completing your CE late. You can still complete your CE between May 1st and June 30th, but there's going to be a $200 late fine in that case. So if you want to avoid that fine, you got to complete your CE prior to April 30th of the odd numbered year. Then the next section here on the right side of 18, failure to renew your license. What happens if you fail to renew your license? Give you guys an example of that. Let's say July 1, 2019 rolls around and I don't renew my license because I forgot to. Well, I can renew it late. So for instance, I can renew it like in mid-July. There's going to be late fines, late CE, all that crap you're going to have to deal with. However, let's say an entire license cycle goes by. July 1, 2019 to July 1, 2021 goes by, and I never even try to late renew. If I never even try to late renew, then that's 2 consecutive years. That's an entire license cycle that I basically let my license lapse. I'm completely and totally canceled at that point in time. Then, if I allowed 2 years to go by without trying to renew, I'd have to go back to real estate school, take the school exam, take the state exam, go with a broker, get fingerprints done, go through the whole process all over again. So if you let your license lapse for 2 consecutive years, in other words, an entire license cycle, your license will be canceled at that point in time. Then bottom right here at page 18, temporary broker's license. So let's say, number one, first and foremost, if there's no broker in place, the salesperson's license is automatically suspended. So it doesn't matter why there's no broker in place. The broker could have just decided, I'm picking up shop and I'm leaving. But if there's no broker in place, all salesperson's licenses are automatically temporarily suspended until a new broker is put in place. Let's say you're at a small brokerage, you guys have 10 agents there and a broker. And the only one who has a broker's license, or broker salesperson's license for that matter, is your current broker. Unfortunately, your broker tragically gets in a car accident and dies. And now, nobody in the firm has a broker salesperson's license to be elevated to broker. Well, the state recognizes there's a hardship there. So what they would allow is they would allow somebody to apply for a temporary broker's license. They might ask you, who could apply for this temporary broker's license? Well, number one, first and foremost, who does apply? Somebody who has 3 years full-time experience as a salesperson. That's number one. Number two, they must apply within 30 days of the broker's death or mental incapacitation. And number three, how long is it good for? It's good for 1 year. You're basically given a year to figure out what you guys are going to do. Is somebody in the firm going to go to real estate school and get their broker's license? Are you guys going to shut down the brokerage firm? Are you guys going to hire another broker from outside the firm? So on and so forth. So you basically have a year to figure out what you're going to do there in that circumstance. So that's the temporary broker's license. And then next here, if you go to page 19, talks about non-resident licensing. So if you're not a resident of New Jersey and you would like to get your New Jersey real estate license, can you? Let's say you're a resident of New York. Can you do that? Yes, you can, absolutely. However, the only difference is if you're a resident from another state other than New Jersey and you want to get your New Jersey real estate license, you just have to sign this thing called an irrevocable consent form. And so the thing to remember for the test is irrevocable consent form. That document basically says, yes, I'm not a resident of New Jersey, but I'm completely and totally fine with being held accountable under the New Jersey real estate license laws. In a nutshell, to simplify it, that's essentially what it says. So if they were to ask you what document must you sign if you're an out-of-state licensee looking to get a New Jersey real estate license, it's the irrevocable consent form, or an out-of-state resident, I should say. Power of attorney, we'll skip over that now. We're going to go over that in the agency chapter. But next year, license lending, I talked about that already. That's when you have an absentee broker. If you're a broker and you're not physically present at least 1 day per week, that's license lending. You basically allowed somebody to open up a shop and just use your name to open up that shop. That's illegal. To avoid license lending, how often must the broker be present? At least 1 day per week. Towards the bottom right here of page 19, talks about pocket cards. So your pocket card is your real estate identification card. So whenever you're operating the real estate business, you are supposed to have a pocket card on you. And your pocket card is really essentially your real estate ID card. So kind of like when you drive a car, if you get pulled over, you have a driver's license. Well, in real estate, whenever you're operating the real estate business, you're supposed to have a pocket card on you. So if you're hosting an open house, you're showing a house, you're going on a listing appointment. Again, if you're ever operating in the real estate business, you are supposed to have a pocket card on you. And this pocket card basically just identifies you as a realtor. So if they were to say, like, if a member of the public ever asks you for evidence of licensure, what would you show them? You would show them your pocket card in that circumstance. So your pocket card is really like your real estate ID card. So if you're hosting an open house even, you're supposed to have this pocket card on you. All right, so let's turn the page, go to page 20. On page 20, it talks about license transfer and termination procedures. So in regards to license transfer and termination procedures, you as a real estate licensee, you're going to most likely be an independent contractor. And as an independent contractor, you are free and clear to go with that brokerage when you want and leave when you want. So let's say that I hang my license with XYZ Realty and I want to leave and go to ABC Realty, hypothetically. In that circumstance, I would have to request my current broker to release my license. They have 5 business days to process that request. But keep in mind, every deal that you did technically was in the name of your brokerage firm. So being that these deals were in the name of your brokerage firm, if I leave XYZ Realty and I have 5 listings and go to ABC Realty, there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to take those with me. And most likely, or definitely, unless we have a contrary agreement in effect in my employment agreement that says, like, when you leave, you can take your listings with you. If there's no language in it that states that, those listings stay with your previous brokerage firm. So again, if they were to ask you a question on this, though, perhaps maybe the question is, when you request termination of licensure with your brokerage firm, how soon must they process that request? The answer is 5 business days. Then we get into the guarantee fund here. So the guarantee fund is a fund that is in place to compensate consumers who are financially harmed due to the guilty actions of a licensee. So if they were to ask you what fund is in place to compensate consumers who are financially harmed due to the guilty actions of a licensee, that's a guarantee fund. So that's number 1, that's a definition. Number 2, if they were to ask you what is the max payment out of the guarantee fund, the max payment is $20,000. So the max payment out of the guarantee fund is going to be $20,000. Now, upon payment out of the guarantee fund, it means they've held a hearing, they heard both sides of the story, and they found you guilty. They essentially found you guilty of screwing somebody out of money, essentially. Now, if that happens and they issue payment out of the guarantee fund, what happens to the guilty licensee's license? It's automatically revoked at that point in time. So, again, upon payment out of the guarantee fund, the guilty licensee's license automatically revoked. Then next here on the bottom right of page 20, place of business. So, in regards to place of business, where must they be? So, when you open a brokerage firm in New Jersey, number 1, it must be located at a brick and mortar shop. In other words, it's got to be a physical location of business. So the state regulation is, if you open a brokerage firm, it's got to be a physical location of business that is open to the public during normal business hours, which is really 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So you must have a physical location of business that is open to the public during normal business hours. So that would be for your place of business here. Branch offices. If you have a branch office, you would have to have, again, a supervising broker. In that case, you can't just open up a ton of offices and have nobody overseeing the licensees. Same regulations as the main office. You'd have to have some kind of thing on the outside that says who the broker of record is and, information, contact info, things like that. So branch office, really the same requirements as the main office. Employment agreements, next here on the bottom left of 21. So for employment agreements, what are these? We spoke about them earlier. That's the agreement between the broker and the salesperson outlining those two main things, your commission split and how soon your broker must pay you out, and that's within 10 business days of receiving the funds. Talked about that earlier in this video. On the right side of 21, you'll see 6 years bolded, and that has to more so do with keeping records, like record keeping. So there's certain records your broker has to keep for 6 years, another one's for 6 months, and what are those? So for 6 years, it's completed transactions, how client's money was handled, and for 6 months, it's unaccepted offers and expired listings. So if they were to ask you what records are kept for 6 years, which ones for 6 months, 6 years, completed transactions, how client's money was handled, 6 months, unaccepted offers and expired listings. So keep those two in mind. Then bottom right here at 21, we have rebates. Newer concept put into place 6 years ago or so, something like that, roughly. So in general, with rebates, they could ask you who could pay out a rebate. Only brokers can pay out rebates, and they may only pay them out to buyers and buyers only. So if they ask you who could pay out a rebate, only a broker can pay out a rebate, and they can only pay it just to a buyer and to a buyer only. Now with this rebate here, if they were to potentially ask, if you advertise a rebate, what disclosure must you make? If you advertise a rebate, you would have to disclose that, there may be tax implications for receiving the rebate. This way people are aware there could be some tax consequences for receiving that. But really the two main things, the rebate, number one, can only be paid by brokers, and number two, only the buyers and buyers only. You can't pay them to sellers, landlords, tenants, just the buyers and buyers only. All right, let's turn and go to page 22. 22, bottom left, prohibition against discrimination in your provision of services. Straightforward, you can't discriminate when dealing with clients. We'll go over that in the anti-discrimination chapter. Right side, commissions. Number one, who's the only person you as a salesperson can accept your commission from? Just your employing broker, just your employing broker only, and how soon would they have to pay you out? Within 10 business days of receiving those funds. And bottom right of 22, talk about the general public. So if you ever advertise to the general public the commission rate that you're going to be charging, what disclosure would you have to make? The disclosure you would have to make that all commission is fully negotiable. So if I'm doing a rental and I say 1 month commission applies, I would have to write in there somewhere that, commission is fully negotiable. And you can never place an advertisement that implies there's a standard rate of commission. So you can't write standard 1 month commission applies, because then that would mean that you fixed a rate of commission, and that would be a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. So you can't price fix, in other words. So, but if you do ever advertise the commission rate that you are charging, you'd have to disclose that commission is fully negotiable. And then next here, on the top left of 23, talks about net listings. We'll talk about that in the listings chapter, but the reason why it's thrown into this chapter is because it would be really a license violation. If you were to take a net listing, which means taking a listing where my client says to me, I want 500, anything above that is going to be your commission. So if I get 525, commission's 25,000. If they set it at 500 and I get 505, commission's 5,000. These are illegal. Net listings are illegal. You don't have to know the reason why, but really the main reason is it creates a conflict of interest. With the buyer's agent, a very big one, because they'd be compensated, a lot of money for every dollar to get above a certain amount. In other words, the additional money they can get their client to pay. Just know that net listings are illegal, number one, and number two, an example of one. Client sets a price, says anything above that is your commission. This is called a net listing, and net listings are illegal. All right, so that does it for the first half of Chapter 3. We're going to cut this video now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the second half of Chapter 3. So that's the first half of Chapter 3.